One of the things we love to do as a church is to hear one another's stories. We believe that when we hear each other's stories, it gives us encouragement. We identify with people. We find places where we connect that maybe we didn't know we connected before. And so I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Mr. Hank. Come on up. This is Hank Rawn. Many of you know Hank. He's been a part of our church quite a while now, huh?
About 10 years.
10 years, okay. So Hank, let's start by this. Tell us about your kind of family of origin, your faith background as a kid.
As a kid, we didn't really have a faith background at all. I didn't know Jesus at all. I think I'd been invited to church with a few of my friends once in a while, but as far as mom and dad, we didn't have any background whatsoever.
So how then did you come to faith, and when was that in your life?
My dad came to Christ late in his life, and he had been feverishly praying for me and for my brother and sisters as well. And he sent me a Bible years prior to, and I went back out on the road trucking, and I would go into a truck stop, and somebody would be there wanting to talk to me about Jesus. And I'd humor them and listen. I'd go back out to my truck, and I'd turn on the radio, and there'd be a Christian song on, and I couldn't turn it off fast enough. Eventually, I just kept listening, and then I thought there had to be something better, so I got my Bible in my truck with me, and I started reading. And one day, I believe it was in 2002, I was on my way out across Wyoming. I stopped at a rest area, and I was reading, and I got through John chapter 3, and at that time, I got down on my knees in the cab of my truck, and I asked Jesus into my heart. And at that point, he laid his... This is an emotional time for me. He laid his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "I've got you." And my life changed incredibly since.
Yeah, so tell me about that. That's been a while, 20-some years, 22 years. What's changed? What's old Hank versus new Hank?
The old Hank doesn't take God's name in vain continually. He doesn't drink anymore. I try to set an example towards others or for others. Sometimes it doesn't take long for the old Hank to reappear. I am a truck driver after all, and he flies out pretty quick sometimes. But for the most part, it's just setting an example and trying to be there for others is how he's changed me.
Yeah. So a few years ago, you came and talked to me, and you felt like God was pressing something upon you. Tell us about that.
Well, I had talked to Mark Budke, and I thought maybe I wanted to become a racetrack chaplain. And after I talked to Mark, I fought for quite a while. I ran from it. But God kept laying it on my heart. And when I came to you, God had convinced me that I needed to become a chaplain at a racetrack. And so at that point, I went to my stepson, Joe, whom I love dearly, and asked him if the track had ever had a full-time chaplain. And he said no. And I said, "Would you like a full-time chaplain?" And he said, "Yes, we would." And so I took on the role.
So you're just for context, your stepson runs the track in Kearney, correct?
My stepson runs the racetrack in Kearney, and he's been the track manager this is starting his 6th year.
All right. And so tell us, what does it look like to be a racetrack chaplain in Kearney?
Mostly I just spend a lot of time walking around, talking to the racers, their families, their crews, getting to know them, praying for them and with them. In general, just right now, building the relationships so they will truly accept me into their family.
Yeah, because last year was your first season.
Last year was the first season.
Yeah, so as you look ahead with this, what do you see, like in this coming race season maybe?
I'm looking ahead towards, I want to set up kind of a life team ministry and bring in the small group and start training people up to do the same thing that I'll be doing eventually.
Oh, that's cool. So as your church family, what can we do to pray for you as you do this?
Give me the wisdom and the strength to stay with it and to be more open with the prayer, especially on the lineup when they're pulling up to race. I feel that that is very important, and I'm a little bit bashful about that part at this time. So that would be huge to have that prayer help.
Yeah. So there may be other folks here that God's been like pushing them with something, maybe large, maybe small, whatever it is that God's just saying, hey, what about this? And they maybe are like you were, kind of running from it for a while. What do we need to hear from you now that you're a couple years down the road from that?
Just do it. Just if he's calling you, do it. Don't run. He's going to get you one way or the other. So,
might as well make it a shorter race, huh?
that's
Right?
right.
Yeah. So here's what I want to emphasize to us. Have you been to seminary?
No.
Do you have any like theological background training that makes you like super Christian?
No.
Okay. And so, is that required to be a blessing and minister to other people?
Not at all.
Yeah. All of us can do this. Like whatever it is God is pressing upon you, he's going to qualify you for. Now, Hank came to me and he said, hey, God's called me to do this. I don't feel equipped. Would you help me be more equipped? And so he and I and Michael, we meet every Saturday morning, not every, but most Saturday mornings at 6 a.m., because Michael was kind of in a similar position with things where people were kind of pressing more ministry upon him and said like, hey, how do we equip these guys better for ministry? And so if that's you, if you're like Hank a few years ago and God's like pressing something upon you and you're like, nope, can't do it. Yeah, you can, right?
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know that you can bless and minister people just like Hank does. So Hank, I'm proud of you, man. Good job.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you.
And I look forward to being at the racetrack.
Likewise.
All right. Hank told